Welcome back. We're here for another fantasy preview episode. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Back with my buddy Miles. Episode 2 of PPR Fantasy. We're here to talk about the wide receivers, arguably the most important position in fantasy. Also, probably just the most exciting position to talk about. So many different ways you can go here. If you haven't listened yet, we have a running back episode out already. Give that a listen as well. Do the same type of format as last week. We'll go by market ADP, talk about guys we like, guys we don't like, everyone in between. So pretty much a consensus across the fantasy community that Justin Jefferson should be wide receiver 1. Not only wide receiver 1, but probably pick 101. I admit I had a moment of weakness where I had Cooper Kupp ahead of him briefly earlier this week, but I came to my senses. Justin Jefferson is wide receiver 1, obviously finished as wide receiver 1 last year. Should expect the same this year, but anything you want to touch on with Justin Jefferson?
No, I mean, I'm a little biased. I've drafted him in the last 2 seasons. Anytime I have the chance, if I'm in range, I take him. I took him over running backs in the past. I think he's the safest lock for a top five wide receiver this year. He hasn't finished outside of the top 6 in fantasy since he's entered the league. So I don't know what could derail him besides either injury or I think he's almost even quarterback proof. I don't think Kirk Cousins is that great. So it doesn't matter. Just draft this guy. If he falls anywhere past the top 2 picks, you're getting a steal. Take this guy with every fiber of your being.
Yeah, so I think he's arguably the safest pick in fantasy this year across every position. Outside of maybe quarterback, you could argue there's some guys in there. But a couple of things that might give you some pause is Kirk Cousins' worst season in Minnesota last year in terms of completion percentage, yards per attempt, and touchdown percentage. Second year in a row he's declined. And he's been bad with pressure, without pressure, all around. With that being said, I do kind of agree with you. I think he is pretty much quarterback proof at this point. I mean, we saw it with guys like DeAndre Hopkins early in his career, Andre Johnson before that. There's certain players that I could be out there probably getting Justin Jefferson some burn. But another slight concern for me is full season of TJ Hawkinson could eat into his target share a little bit. And I think you'd agree with me that Jordan Addison's going to be a better number 2 option than Adam Thielen. With that being said, though, Thielen still saw a huge target share, so I don't know if that will really affect him that much. Arguably, you could also argue that it might help him a bit, see less double teams, etc. And I think the Vikings were 11-0 in one-score games last year. I don't think they'll be a 13-win team this year. I don't think they'll be even close to that. So you could argue that they'll might be a little bit more negative game script, which will also help Justin Jefferson. Although they were pretty pass heavy, both leading and trailing last year. Get rid of Dalvin Cook, obviously, but yeah, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 1. You should take him with the first pick. Now, he's also going ADP 1 overall in pretty much every single league format. Jamar Chase, wide receiver 2 by ADP. Overall ADP is 4. I make an argument he should be the second player off the board. I mean, we did see Joe Burrow suffer a calf strain, but should be all right for the season. That offense with Joe Burrow is just absolutely incredible. The thing with Chase compared to Jefferson, however, Chase is going to have these huge games, and he's going to have games where he's just putting up pretty pedestrian numbers. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. It doesn't seem like him and T. Higgins are able to both go off the same week. So there is a little bit more inconsistency there, but he has those games where he goes for, I feel like, 40-plus points pretty much once or twice a year. So I like him a lot. Anything you want to add on Jamar Chase?
I have him as my wide receiver 4, and I know that's probably like that's against the grain in terms of where everybody's ranking him, especially across the market ADP. I like Jamar Chase, but like you said, you alluded to it. It's just the boom or bust potential is like why he's there. You love the fact that Joe Burrow is best friends with the guy, lobbied to draft him, loves him, throws him the ball. He mentioned this offseason how it's important to like have, that team atmosphere and have that kind of relationship with his receivers. My only concern, and like granted last year, if you remember, you missed some time, right? Jamar Chase only played 13 games. He was still getting about 10 targets a game. And like the reason he's still a tier 1 guy for me, even at wide receiver 4, targets lead to production. Like these guys can all catch the ball. If they had a drop problem, they wouldn't be top receivers, right? If he's going to get the targets, this guy's going to perform. And if he's healthy, I don't really see him slipping below a top 5 receiver in the league. I just think there's a couple other guys that I think don't share the T. Higgins aspect of their wide receiver room. So a little bit lower than I guess market, but I still love Jamar Chase, and he's a lock for a first round pick. If you're getting him at pick number 5 or 5, I think you're lucky. So love Jamar Chase.
Yeah, one of those guys I think we both agree on. I'd probably rather have this guy as well. Cooper Kupp, he comes in as my wide receiver 3. He's right behind Chase in overall ADP, right at 5. People sleeping on Kupp a little bit. I know he was hurt last year. I think he probably could have played towards the end of last year if they were at all competitive. I think it was more of a let's just shut down the season. But over the past 2 years, when he's played, gone over 15 PPR points, 92% of his starts, which is absolutely ridiculous. Justin Jefferson's second over that time period, going over at 68%. When Kupp and Stafford are on the field, that guy is putting up 15 plus points every single week. He is a little bit older, but he's heading into year 30. His 30-year-old year, but also came into the league a little bit later, so it's not like he's been playing for 10 seasons at this point. Just Mr. Consistency. I'm not too concerned with the injury stuff. Like I said, I think a lot of it was more how the team was doing and how they viewed last year, but I'm all in on Cooper Kupp. I'm taking him probably second overall if I have the opportunity.
Yep, he's my wide receiver 2. I think you had Chase 2. I have Cooper Kupp 2. I mean, listen, I know this is going to sound like hyperbole because Cooper Kupp doesn't flash you with all of these like one-handed great catches. There's an argument to be made that he's still the best receiver in football. The dude won the Triple Crown. Like he did stuff that we haven't seen other receivers do. And I just don't think he gets enough respect for how good this guy, like, it's hard to argue that Justin Jefferson is not the best receiver in the league, but right after it's Cooper Kupp. If he's not in the conversation, you're not really watching football, in my opinion. He played 9 games last year, and he averaged 18 fantasy points a game. 18.2 fantasy points a game in those starts. So when he's out there, he's producing at levels like Justin Jefferson. The only real question you have is injury, which I'm with you. I think he could have played last year. I think the Rams just sucked. So I love Cooper Kupp. I have no hesitation taking this guy. Like, I look at, and this is a real situation you might be in where you might be at 102, 103, and you might have the choice of McCaffrey or Cooper Kupp. If I'm in that situation,
Cooper Kupp every time.
Yeah. Every single time I'm going Cooper Kupp. So that's how I feel about him. I don't really have any doubts. This guy's been a certified freak on the field. He's awesome.
Yeah, I guess the concern for Kupp's the same as last year. Either Stafford gets hurt, the Rams are terrible, or Kupp gets hurt. But I think, if he plays, he's putting up numbers, and he should play the majority of the games this year. I expect a big bounce back. No problems at all with Cooper Kupp. I guess the other thing we should say about Kupp, literally zero target competition in LA outside of maybe like Cam Akers. I don't even know.
Jefferson.
They still have Tyler Higbee. I don't know. Yeah.
That team's
so bad, and they're gonna be trailing pretty much every single game. And Matt Stafford loves slinging it in garbage time. So I think there's a legitimate argument for Kupp to be wide receiver 1 at the end of this season. I think the only thing holding people back is probably the Rams offense, or just Rams as a whole and his age. But yeah, I'm all in on Kupp. Let's see. Wide receiver 4 by ADP, Tyreek Hill. He's going at 7th overall right now. He's the last wide receiver in my tier 1. I mean, absolutely love Tyreek Hill. When Tua was on the field last year, Hill and Waddle, both top 10 receivers. Obviously, Hill's been a top 5, top 3 guy for years now. So I have no qualm saying for some reason he just I don't love him as much as some of the other guys, but by no fault of his own. I think that's more of a personal preference thing. By all accounts, he's also been on record saying he wants to go for 2,000 yards this season, which he could with enough targets. And I do think that offense is concentrated enough to support both him and Waddle, so not too many concerns with me on Tyreek.
No, I like Tyreek Hill too. I think so. He's my last guy in my tier 1. I've got one more guy on my tier 1 that I think we're going to get to next, but I like him. I'm with you. I think the way they play has shown you that you can have 2 top wide receivers, much like the Bengals offense with Chase and Higgins. I think Hill and Waddle can coexist in that offense, and you can have fantasy production from both. When I look at a tier 1 guy, and this is just how I view receivers, not so much as Tyreek Hill, because I think he's going to get this. You got to catch 100 balls. Like if you're not in contention to catch 100 balls in the season, you're not a tier 1 guy for me. And I think Tyreek Hill really doesn't get hurt that often. He's always on the field. He's faster than lightning. Like you don't have to be a great quarterback to get him the ball. I really love where he's at. I mean, he's going to be a focal point. So I love Tyreek Hill. I kind of like him as more of a back half of the first round guy. I think you really start to get value if you're on that wraparound. You can get him, maybe pair him with another receiver, or get one of those top running backs too. But I think that's where his value is. I think if you're taking him in the middle of the first round, it's a little rich for me. That might be the point where I start to question, do I go running back if one of those top guys is there?
I was going to say he's probably the first receiver where I'm debating between him and McCaffrey. I'm probably taking McCaffrey in most of those situations.
Yeah.
Arguably taking Bijan over him too, but yeah.
Yeah.
So just so Tyreek's projections at DraftKings right now are 102 receptions, 1,300 yards, 7 TDs. If he gets those TDs up there, he could really go crazy. Wide receiver 5 by ADP is Stephon Diggs. He's going overall 11. I like Stephon Diggs. I have him at wide receiver 7. I don't love Stephon Diggs in the first round. I love him as a second round pick, but we talked about it yesterday. That pick 9, pick 8 in the first round fucking sucks this year. And I think that's where you're taking Stephon Diggs and you don't feel terrible about it, but you're not going into the draft saying I want Stephon Diggs in the first round. And I think there's some underlying things. I'm not overly concerned with the contract and him being upset last year, but he does see double teams at a higher rate than most guys in the league. I think he'll be better with Josh Allen healthy, but like I said, I don't love him.
See, I'm going to go against you here on this one because, every year I look at Stephon Diggs, and he's always in the same category. He's back of the first round, top of the second round guy. That's what he's always been. And he always performs to that level. He's, so consistent because, like you said, in Buffalo, they have Gabe Davis. They did draft Kincaid. Their running game's really not that dynamic. This guy just always gets targets. He always gets the ball. It's not like he was upset because, he's getting 50 targets a year. The dude's one of the most targeted receivers in the league over the last 3 years. And for that reason, I don't think anything's going to change. Buffalo's going to be a really competitive team. They're going to throw the ball around, and Stephon Diggs is going to be on the receiving end of that, no pun intended. But, maybe the touchdowns dropped. He had 11 last year. They might come back a little bit, but again, like I said, for a tier 1 first round guy, I want to know that you're going to catch 100 balls, and I want to know that you have the target share to support that. Stephon Diggs is one of those guys. He checks that box for me, so I like him. he's my wide receiver 3. Like, I'm taking him before I take Jamar Chase, before I take Tyreek Hill. I really like the guy. I don't really know how he ever does anything bad for anybody's team that he's on. So
I pray to God you pick ahead of me in our fantasy draft. So you can
please,
have. I'll gladly take Jamar Chase.
please.
I was gonna say one of the things Diggs does have is I feel like similar to Devontae Adams, they seem to be the more red zone threats than some of these other top
That's
guys.
true.
I'm looking now. Diggs 9.2 targets last year. I feel like that's actually down a little bit. So yeah, I do think there's a chance you're getting a little bit of value on Diggs just based off of people buying into this bullshit narrative that like he's unhappy and all that stuff. So don't hate that. Let's see. Wide receiver 6 by ADP this year is Devontae Adams. Love Devontae Adams as a talent. Hate Devontae Adams as a fantasy player this year. And it's really to no fault of his own. I refuse to take a wide receiver in the first round that's depending on a combination of Jimmy Garoppolo and who is it, Jarrett Stidham? They might not even have
on the Broncos.
Yeah.
So I'm hit him like $10 million.
Yeah. So listen, if Devontae Adams falls to me in the middle to late of the second round, I'll take him 1,000%. I'm not taking him with a first round pick and probably not taking him with one of the top picks in the second round.
No, but hear me out here. Like we all know Devontae Adams is a league winner a couple of years back. Like the league in reception. Like Devontae Adams, a talent. There's no questions. Like 100-ball guy, love him. The quarterback in the system completely knocked him out of my tier 1 because I just don't trust that offense. But hear me out. If I'm sitting at the back of the first round, there are some formats where I'm going to double up on receiver and I might go get him. There's like some leagues that I would be happy and say, back of the first round, I get, say, Jamar Chase or Stephon Diggs is there, the guy that you don't want. Stephon Diggs is sitting there. There's worlds where I don't love the running backs, and I'm going to pull him on my team too. I like him. I don't think he always is on the field. I just don't love the offense, but I do think if your receiver room for your fantasy team is Adams and Diggs, you're going to have a market advantage at that wide receiver 2 spot. Like that's how you can kind of get that positional advantage because like who's your wide receiver 2 going to be at the 1? If you're picking 101, you're probably ending up with a lower tier guy. Devontae Adams is going to give you some boost to your team. So in some builds, I do kind of like him, but not a guy that I'm necessarily targeting this year.
I will say there's one scenario where Adams' ADOT drops significantly, but he sees like 200 targets this year.
Yeah,
which
180 last season.
Yeah,
That's
which is a PPR monster. There's also been rumors, I don't know how substantiated they are, that he's going to request a trade, assuming that Jacobs doesn't play. Now, I don't know how likely it is that they can even move him at this point, but yeah, I guess for me, Adams is a guy, if he falls to me, I'm glad to take him, but I'm not looking to – he's not a guy I'm going into my drafts targeting, I should say.
Yeah, I agree. If he's there and you like what you can do with the build, I like it, but I don't love him as a wide receiver 1. As a wide receiver 2, he's insane, but that's where you have to kind of overdraft him too. You have to overdraft him there and like kind of forego your running backs to get him. So it's interesting, but yeah.
So wide receiver 7 is CeeDee Lamb. I love CeeDee Lamb this year. I think, like we talked about in our last episode, I think although the Cowboys are saying they're going to run the ball more, I think they're actually going to air it out a bit. And Dak seems to love CeeDee Lamb. Hell of a talent. Guy was a top 10 receiver last year, only 24. So yeah, he only saw 9.2 targets, but a 10.1 ADOT. I think if his targets even go up a whole target per game, I think he very well could finish in the top 5 here.
Yeah, not much to add on CeeDee Lamb. I like him. Again, he's not a guy that I like necessarily love. What is nice about him, though, is he is like the clear number 1 guy. And I think what you're going to see with a lot of these like receiving rooms, there's multiple people who can come in and kind of steal some targets. I think you're kind of safeguarded with that with CeeDee Lamb. So I like him. I I'm not as high on how much more upside he has. I mean, 156 targets last year. He did catch 107 balls, 1,300 yards. I like him. I think he'll probably do about the same, which is a safe bet. But he's kind of like a mid-second to late second round guy for me.
Yeah, see, I had him at wide receiver 6. I'm pretty high on him. Now, wide receiver 8 by market ADP is A.J. Brown. Obviously went over the Eagles last year. Hell of a year. I have him at wide receiver 9. I like A.J. Brown. I'm fearful that there's going to be a little bit of regression with the Eagles as a whole this year. And I still think they're going to be probably the best team in the NFC, them or the Niners. But I'm worried that Devonta Smith might see bigger target share. Dallas Goedert also missed some time last year, which obviously helped A.J. Brown. And Jalen Hurts is inevitably going to take a lot of the touchdowns away from other players. So A.J. Brown, I like him in the second round. I like other guys more, but don't really have anything bad to say about him. I just think his ceiling is a bit more capped than some of these other top players.
Yeah, and here's my thing with him, and this is the only reason he's my wide receiver 9 too. So it's not like I have him like way down my list. I still think he's a really good option. I think you might see this season Devontae Smith take another step, and if he does, that hurts A.J. Brown. He had 11 touchdowns last year. You back off, maybe just say he just drops to 7, 4 less touchdowns. He then is probably, overvalued from where he's going to be drafted, right? I don't think that he's going to necessarily fall off the face of the earth, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot more he can do in a crowded receiving room like that. And that's kind of what I mean. Like opposite to CeeDee Lamb, they have a lot of options. They got people to get the ball to. I see a little bit of regression coming, but I'd be happy to be wrong because A.J. Brown he's a great talent. But I'm not as high on this year as I have been in past years.
You also might see some of his like screen work and stuff decline if they actually use DeAndre Swift as more of a flank. So yeah, I like AJ Brown. Don't love him where he's going right now. This next guy I'm obsessed with. He's my wide receiver 5. Going overall 19th, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the sun god as we like to call him in Madden. Absolutely love the guy. Just a couple quick notes on him. Most receptions in NFL history over a player's first 2 years, and was the only wide receiver last season to see a target on over 30% of his routes other than Tyreek Hill. Lions keep Ben Johnson at OC, Jared Goff coming back, Jameson Williams suspended for the beginning of the season. Now, they do bring in Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think will take a decent amount of target share away from everybody, but I don't see why Amon-Ra can't have 110, 120 receptions this year and get close to 1,500 receiving yards. I'm all in on him. If he's there in the second round, I'm taking him almost every single time.
I'm with you. You know what's great? Like I look at his stats from last season and like 106 catches, he had 1,100 yards. If you look at all the other top guys, their yardage is way higher than where his is at. So I do think he's a guy like I look at, and I think we feel like the same way about him. I think he's got real big upside. He's my wide receiver 6. I like that offense. I think the Lions are going to throw the ball around. They're going to do everything, but that offense was great last year. They scored points. I'm high on Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially for where he's getting drafted right now. And I think what you're going to see is like as the summer goes on and we get closer to week 1, I think his stock is going to rise. I think he's going to go up as people like, you look at a Devontae Adams and you're like, well, this situation's horrible. A.J. Brown's got a crowded room. CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys, what's their offense going to look like? I think he's a guy who's going to rise and people say, well, this offense is going to be high-flying. Jameson Williams isn't there the first few weeks of the season because of his gambling suspension. And when he comes back, you have a speedster on the outside to open the field up more for him. So I really like this guy. He's a guy that I would go into drafts and like. He's on my list of guys I want. He's a
Yeah,
my guy. He's a guy I want.
I am overdrafting Amon-Ra St. Brown. If I'm at the 1-2 turn, I'm probably taking him with that early pick in the second round. Most scenarios.
It depends on who's on the board, but I don't think that's that crazy because I think you're not going to get him on. If you're at the back of the first round, you're not getting him on the next turn. He's out of your range, and at that point, you have to overdraft. I don't hate that because I do. If you believe in the projection that he's going to finish that high, I don't know why you wouldn't take him. And if you just watch the guy's got incredible hands. Like doesn't drop anything, in phenomenal shape. Like that doesn't really matter, but God matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say he hasn't had any issues with durability. He's only 23, so arguably still a year or two away from his prime. I mean, who's to say he doesn't hit that ceiling this year and finishes like a wide receiver overall one? Love him. So next guy on the list, we've had a lot of back and forth in this guy. Wide receiver 10 by ADP is Garrett Wilson. I think we both agree that we absolutely love him. But Hard Knocks and all these training camp videos are going to push him into the first round, in my opinion. And I think there's a chance he pays off at ADP there, but I don't feel nearly as great taking him in the first round as the second round. So all that to say, love the player, don't love the capital that you have to give up to get him this year, which sucks because I could see him filling that Devontae Adams role for Aaron Rodgers and going absolutely crazy this year. But I think there's a little bit more risk than people are imagining with a first round pick here. And like I said, you can lose your leagues in the first few rounds. You can't win them. So I'm out on Garrett Wilson in the first round. If he falls to me in the second round, I have no problem taking him.
I'm with you. It's funny because like we went back and forth on him so much, and like his market value is 10. I have him ranked as my wide receiver 10. Like I think we see him all the same way. Like his upside, like you said, is crazy with Aaron Rodgers. All that being said, I think he's the guy that has the most variability in draft boards the rest of the summer. Like he had that ankle injury this past week, and people are like, oh my God, is he going to be okay? Dropped. Oh, he's back, and they throw a highlight with Aaron Rodgers, him toe tapping in the back of the end zone. Okay, he's a first round guy. It's guys like this that, at least for me, I might like. This is going to be. I might stay away from him. I might stay away from him altogether because I don't really know if I want to ride the train up or down. And I feel like he's going to get overdrafted. Guys who we're talking about right now, I think have just as much upside. The only difference that I think when you go to like that next category of receiver is like some of these next guys are the twos on their team. And I don't love betting on a two over a clear one like Garrett Wilson's projected to be, but with the production they've had in the past, I don't see why, some of these other guys can't outperform him. So not that I'm staying away from him and he's on my not draft list, but he's kind of moving in that direction just based on the reports. And Hard Knocks is only going to make it worse.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to know.
No, yeah.
They're going to be drafting him. Like
the fact that he's on the Jets and they're going to be on Hard Knocks, there's going to be a kid in your league that takes Garrett Wilson with like the 6th overall pick.
Yeah.
And my other thing is like, if where he is getting drafted right now around that 10 spot, I think there is going to be situations where you could have one of those superior running backs, like a Saquon, like a Nick Chubb, like a Derrick Henry. And I think I'd rather have a running back from one of those top tiers rather than Garrett Wilson. Just like you said, a lot of variability. I'm also not, I know that training camp looks great. Everybody looks fucking great in training camp. I'm not completely sold that Alan Lazard isn't going to see the most targets in that offense. I think there is a reason he came over from Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is weird like that. So yeah, and
he likes his guys. Like he likes his guys.
Yeah, I'm also not sold that the Jets are just going to be like this perfect, well-oiled machine. I'm not sold that Aaron Rodgers isn't washed yet. So yeah, I think there's a lot more downside to Garrett Wilson than people are giving it credit.
No, here to that point too. Like, I don't think people are giving enough, like, in just general football circles. Like, I don't think people are giving enough credit to the fact that, like, that division is going to be really hard. Like, the secondaries they're going to play against. Like, say what you want about the Patriots, Belichick knows how to coach a secondary and coach a defense. Buffalo isn't getting, like, Buffalo is a Super Bowl type of contending team. Like, that's what their aspirations are, right? The Dolphins have Vic Fangio. I know Jalen Ramsey's not going to play the first part of the season, but, like, they have a good – they're in a tough division to score points. Their schedule's also hard. I mean, they play the Chiefs. They play the Eagles. Like, these are the out-of-division games. They play the Chargers. I don't think that they have, like, this teed-up schedule. They play the Cowboys. Like, they're going to have tough games, and I don't know if it's just going to lend itself to the Jets being this world-beating team. So – I'm kind of talking myself out of Garrett Wilson, but I mean, we'll see what happens the rest of the summer. I don't know.
Yeah, I do like betting on these second-year receivers. They usually have huge breakouts, but yeah, I just think that the market's going crazy with Garrett Wilson. So I love him. If I can get him at the 15th overall pick, I'm taking him every time. But I'm afraid that he's going to be off the board pretty early in most of my drafts. Following Garrett Wilson, we have the second Dolphins wide receiver, Jalen Waddle, going overall number 23. Hell of a season last year. Doing all that with only 6.9 targets per game, which is pretty impressive. Did have a 12.2 ADOT, along with Tyreek Hill's 12.4 ADOT. That's the Dolphins offense, crazy efficient when Tua was in there. Yeah, Jalen Waddle, to a greater degree than Tyreek Hill, is really going to depend on Tua's health, I think.
Yeah.
I have no problem. Jalen Waddle is my wide receiver 11, and I really do love the talent and think he'll have a great year, but I am a little bit more concerned about him than some of my other tier 2 wide receivers mainly due to Tua's health.
He is. No, you're right. I think he's Tua dependent and more so than Tyreek Hill. I still think he's a high-end wide receiver too. If he's in there, like, Jalen Waddle is going to perform as a wide receiver too for your team. I like him. I don't really have much bad to say about him. Like, this is his third season. I don't really know what he can't do on the field. And with Tyreek Hill out there, it kind of opens the field up for him to have that second corner on him. And that guy's going to burn most second corners in the league. Like, he could be a one on, a select few teams in the league. So I really like Jalen Waddle. I've got him in past years. He's a guy that, again, not targeting him, but if the time comes up and it might be a couple picks early, I'm taking him. I like where his floor is. I like that about him. So
I will say, I think there is a scenario if Tua somehow plays 80% plus games this year, that Waddle finishes ahead of Tyreek Hill.
There is an outside chance.
I think there's a chance. Like, I don't think he's that far away from being the Dolphins' true number one wide receiver. I know Tyreek Hill's obviously a bigger brand name, but that dude is a straight up baller. So no qualms taking him. Like you, I don't know if I'm targeting him per se. I do think a lot of people get scared away too because he's wide receiver too in that offense, but the targets are so concentrated. Like we said, both can ball out if Tua is there. Following him, we have T. Higgins and Devontae Smith, both going at 28th overall. Also both quote-unquote wide receiver 2s on their respective teams. Wanted to make one note of Devonta Smith. Balled out when Dallas Goedert didn't play. However, 4 of his 5 lowest games did come when Goddard was healthy, and he was wide receiver 17 in overall points per game last year. So don't hate him. I don't really want him to be my wide receiver 1.
No. You can't. If you have him as your wide receiver 1, you're in trouble. And that's not because I don't think he's good, but, like, and this might just be how I like to structure my teams, but, like, I almost want to go wide receiver heavy in my first few rounds and potentially get Devontae Smith as, like, a low wide receiver 2 or a high wide receiver 3. I don't think he's gonna like again. Garrett Wilson is a borderline 1, right? Devontae Smith isn't going to be that. Like that's where I have a clear kind of shift in like, he's a little bit different. I like him. He's in a good offense. They're going to throw the ball. There's other mouths to feed. And that's the only reason that he's at the bottom of my tier 2. He's my wide receiver 15. And it's just because I think like what you said, there's a little bit of variability with when Goddard plays. Is Hurts going to have another MVP season? If the Eagles regress a little bit, is he going to look as good? There's still AJ Brown we just talked about. So there's a lot of things that may affect him, but I still like the play. I love the player. I mean, he won a Heisman. The dude's got talent. On my fantasy team, you have to put him in the right slot. I don't, even as a wide receiver 2, I like it. I don't love it.
Yeah, I think he's similar to AJ Brown. I think it's more just a overall targets to go around. I mean, there's a lot of people to feed in that offense. Hurts takes away a lot of plays from everybody. So yeah, T. Higgins, I actually am pretty high on this year. Playing for a contract. So I think
where is he in your rankings?
So I have T. Higgins. I have at wide receiver 14. He is in my tier 3. But I had Devontae Smith at wide receiver 16. Again, I kind of hate that I have to do this, but just the fact that he is wide receiver 2, I think there is a legitimate ceiling cap unless Jamar Chase gets hurt, God forbid. But I just don't see a world where I could even see Devontae Smith maybe overtaking AJ Brown in target share, like in a really unlikely scenario, but I think there's a 0% chance T. Higgins comes close to Jamar Chase's in that offense.
Without injury to Jamar Chase, there's no way that I think he does more than Jamar Chase does. But that being said, as like a number 2 wide receiver, just speaking football, right? T. Higgins might be he's on the short list of one of the best number 2 options in the entire league. Like that dude's a 1 on a lot of teams. He's that good. I think if you go back and look, he's on a lot of those teams that have good pushes in their fantasy seasons because he's outperforming where he gets drafted. So it kind of, all of this always comes down to like, where can you get the value in your draft? But T. Higgins is my wide receiver 11. He's right behind Garrett Wilson for me. He's ahead of Jalen Waddle. Like that's where I think of him. He puts up points. His target share isn't maybe always the most consistent, but I like where he is. And like when you talk about Jamar Chase, like how he's a boomer bust player, I think you get a little bit more of the consistency with T. Higgins and like what he's going to do week to week. So I really like T. Higgins.
I think he's got some touchdown upside too. He's 7 touchdowns last year, 6 touchdowns the year before. Even if him and Chase get a little bit more level, T. Higgins is finishing above ADP. Obviously a pretty large ADOT, 10.8. Yeah, I think he's a bigger receiver, so who knows? Maybe they use him in the red zone a little bit more than they had in the past. Okay, moving on to wide receiver 14 by ADP is DK Metcalf. I have him at wide receiver 13. 25 years old. I believe he's entering his age 26 season, which is arguably the prime for most receivers. I think this could be the year he actually goes crazy and finishes as like a top 5 wide receiver. A lot dependent on Geno Smith keeping up what he did last year, but I love Metcalf this year. I love him. I love Lockett. I'm targeting Metcalf in most of my drafts at that 2-3 turn.
He's a good. I think this crop of guys, like we just talked about, you're getting a good wide receiver 2. Like if this guy's your wide receiver 2, your team's gonna be pretty dangerous. I really like Metcalf too. I guess my only real concern is what this offense is gonna look like. There's the Geno Smith question. They added Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they drafted Zach Charbonnet. So I don't know if they're gonna run the ball more with dual running back, have running back sets where they're both on the field. I don't know if they're gonna just force feed JSN in the slot. I don't know if Tyler Lockett, like I don't know who's gonna take over, but I don't think you can deny that DK Metcalf has the potential to just take any play and make it a big play. It's a big play player. So I like DK Metcalf. I like him pretty much like where you said, like back of the second, third, top of the third round. I would go for him. But I do think there are a couple things that you just gotta like carry with him and be like, he might not perform as great as I'm drafting him, but on the boom side, like you said, there's a chance he's like a top 5 wide receiver overall this year. So
Yeah. All right. This next guy I've been dying to talk about, Chris Olave. He's my wide receiver 12. Last guy in my tier 2. I mean, I just don't understand why people aren't talking about Chris Olave more. He's entering year 2, a potential breakout season. If the guy doesn't get hurt last year, I'm curious if people are talking about him like Garrett Wilson. I mean, the guy had a unbelievable 14.2 ADOT last year. Arguably gets a quarterback upgrade with Derek Carr. I know.
No, he does.
I mean, Andy Dalton kind of played all right last year. All I'm saying.
Get out of here.
The dude absolutely balled. They get Michael Thomas back, which I guess hypothetically take away from his target share. I'm not remotely worried about Michael Thomas. Like you said, he's no way he plays a full season. Alvin Kamara's probably going to be out for part of the season, which gives him even more target share. I don't understand why Chris Olave isn't higher on people's boards. I am all over him. And he's a guy that, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, if I could get – here's my dream draft, okay? I take like a Bijan or a Saquon or a Nick Chubb in the first round. I get Amon-Ra at the turn, and I get Chris Olave in the third round. I'm fully torqued at that point. My team is set, okay? I love Chris Olave. He's a guy that I'm definitely targeting at the end of the second round. If he's there in the third round, I'm taking him 100 out of 100 times. I don't care who the hell else is on the board. I'm taking him. He's
definitely he's a third round guy for me. And I think you make a really good point that I don't think a lot of people are talking about like drafts, at least right now. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, just in terms of like football production, there's an argument to be made that Chris Olave could have won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like, that's how good he was. He just played on the Saints with Andy Dalton, and nobody cares. And it's the Jets. They just got Aaron Rodgers, and it's New York, and he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's the difference. That's why I think you're seeing this drop in ADP. But I think this just speaks to how deep the receivers are. Because I do like Chris Olave. He's more of a lower wide receiver 2 for me. I really like him if he's in my flex. Like, if he's my flex guy, and clearly I'm loading up on wide receivers at that point, I love him. But I do think the touchdown upside is a little limited because I don't think the Saints are going to be I don't think they're going to be dynamic enough to score from distance into the red zone, into the end zone. You know what I mean? He's not going to be catching these bombs and taking it the distance, but he's going to get production. So I like him, but he is starting to where I'm crossing over into like, I'm drafting you more as my wide receiver 3 flex, but I can see him, like you said, if he has a good season, there's all the signs in the world pointing that he's like a very high-end wide receiver 2. I have a really hard time believing he's a wide receiver 1. But when you talk about is the question, do I take Garrett Wilson in the first round or Chris Olave in the third? Value pick-wise, I'm going Chris Olave. That's what I'm going to go. Yeah.
The Saints also have the easiest strength of schedule this year by PFF, which should help everybody on that team. But yeah, I will admit that his touchdown upside is a little bit capped, especially because fucking Taysom Hill still finds touches. And at some point, we need to make it stop, man. Taysom Hill needs to be stopped. But I really love Chris Olave. I'm all over him. After Chris Olave, I feel like, for me at least, this is when for me it starts entering a little bit of like a dead zone. Not quite, but we're starting to get there. But Deebo Samuel, 40th overall by ADP. I will admit I was way lower on him about 2 weeks ago when we started talking about it. I've come back up to it. My biggest fear with Debo is just volume, I guess. There are so many weapons on that offense. We all know Kyle Shanahan literally will put anybody in there. Obviously, a major positive for Debo that Brock Purdy has been cleared. He's going to be healthy. He's going to play. I guess another positive is there's, if CMC doesn't play every game, Debo is obviously gonna go up. But yeah, I guess I'm just concerned with the overall volume. I do think he bounces back from last season, but he's my wide receiver 15.
So I mean, we see him kind of similar. He's my wide receiver 14. I like him because of where he's getting drafted. Like, he's a number one option in an offense we think is going to be really good, but he's getting drafted behind all of the guys we just talked about. There's an argument to be made that as a number one guy, we should be drafting him in the second round, but you don't have to do that. So I love the value there. And like where he's going, like I said, I keep going back into it. The way that I'm drafting, he would be my wide receiver, like low into top 3. And if you're flexing Debo, your team has a wide receiver powerhouse. Like you're stacked, I think. The mouths to feed argument is fair. Christian McCaffrey, if he's going to be the RB1 overall in the season, that takes away from Debo. Brandon Ayuk is going to be a highly talked about flex guy. That takes away from Debo. George Kittle's a good tight end. That takes away from Debo. There's reasons to be concerned, but I still like him. Honestly, he's on a short list of guys for me that if I can get him later on, I see him slipping. Like, I keep an eye on this guy because, 2 years ago, he finished as a top 5 wide receiver. Last year, he kind of took a step back. I don't see why he wouldn't go back to that. This to me is the last year the 49ers are really going to be a powerhouse team before all their contracts come up. So I like Debo. I like Debo a lot.
I can get behind where he's going. I get that. I mean, I'm looking at running backs going in this range. We have Jahmyr Gibbs at 38, Kenneth Walker 43, Dameon Pierce 43, Miles Sanders 47. I think I probably take Gibbs over Debo, but other than that, I'm probably going Debo.
That's what I was going to say. In that range, it's Gibbs, and I take Debo after those because I think Debo's got a higher ceiling than what Kenneth Walker. I don't think Kenneth Walker's finishing as a top 5 running back. There is some world where Debo's a top 5 receiver. There's some world where it can happen. I don't know if, it's likely. Maybe there's like a 0.1% chance, but I like it. So I'm probably going to go. I think where he's going, it's like perfectly priced. It's right where I want him. So I like Debo a lot.
I've come around on him. You've gotten to me a little bit on Debo. This next guy, not sexy at all, but pretty solid player. Amari Cooper going 41st overall. You expect Deshaun Watson to be better. Hypothetically, he can't be worse than he was last year. He was seriously horrendous.
To be fair to him, he sat out so much of the year that we almost forget about now. Like, it's hard to come back when everybody's mid to late season form. I think he will be better. He'll be better.
So here's my thing on Amari Cooper. I have him at wide receiver 20. I think a lot of people feel similar to me. Like, he's not a sexy pick. If I can get him in the 4th round, I'm probably taking him. I mean, he's got a really solid floor. I don't know what his ceiling is, but like we said, he is the wide receiver 1 there, and there's not a whole lot of competition outside of Elijah Moore, who's apparently the greatest player in NFL history at training camp. But I like Amari Cooper. He, like I said, he's my wide receiver 20, so I'm like a little bit lower on him, but I think he's got an extremely high floor. So I'm fine with him being like my flex player or even like a wide receiver 2 if I target running backs more early on.
Yeah, I think that's right. Here's my question to you. So we just got through the discussion with Devo versus Gibbs and guys running backs around his ADP. If you're looking at Dameon Pierce or Amari Cooper on the board, are you going Amari Cooper or are you going Dameon Pierce? Or does it depend on the build?
I'm going Cooper over Pierce, but I think I'm more likely looking at a quarterback or a tight end.
That's fair, right? Like I think Cooper is the range where it's like, do I want Amari Cooper or can I get Joe Burrow? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I gotta dig in on my quarterbacks, but if that's the question, I'm probably taking Joe Burrow. Seriously,
yeah.
I'm probably taking Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I could see myself taking like a Mark Andrews here potentially if he was there, a TJ Hawkinson. But again, I feel like Cooper's a guy that he's gonna be like when you have the Q, he's gonna be like the guy that's top ranked and like an auto drafted team's gonna take him or something.
Yeah.
But if he does fall to me, but if he falls to me, I'm fine with that. Let's see. Next up, we have Keenan Allen. I think he's very similar argument to Cooper. Not all that sexy, but a really fast-paced offense. Kellen Moore comes in. Keenan did decline a little bit the past year, so I'm slightly concerned considering he's 31 years old. But yeah, essentially the same argument for me as Cooper. Not a guy that I'm out there targeting, but super solid floor. Going to get a ton of targets, one of the best route runners in the league.
He is one of the, and everybody, like all the top receivers always mention that. I find it so funny. They're always like, who's the best route runner? Everybody always thinks about Keenan Allen and that. And I'm like, that is respectable. But where is he ranked in your like list? Because he's my wide receiver 27. I'm much lower on him than
I have him wide receiver 21. So I'm a little bit lower, not a whole lot lower. And the reason I didn't penalize him as much, I think with the addition of Quentin Johnson and Mike Evans, or not Mike Evans, and they already have Mike Williams, I think there's a scenario where Keenan does play in the slot a lot. And I think that's where he could still have a lot of success. Now, there were reports out of The Athletic that Mike Williams is also going to get in the slot more, so I'm not too concerned. Or I'm not too sure what the deal is there in LA, but I like Keenan Allen, very similar to Amari Cooper for me.
I think the Chargers sneaky probably have one of the best wide receiver arms in the league, and it's not sexy. That's the craziest part. Like nobody thinks of Keenan Allen as a top guy, even though he gets talked about as a great route runner. I like Mike Williams, but it's like two sides of the argument. There's like too many guys out there to get the ball to, because then you're also talking about Eckler out of the backfield who's a great receiving back, and they just drafted Quentin Johnson, who, like, for me, if I want to get in on the Chargers offense, I think he's my entry point. It's not going to be Keenan Allen. I'm going to forego that pick. I'm going to forego Mike Williams, and I'm going to take a later flyer on a Quentin Johnson because I think he's got the upside to play the full season, be that deep threat for Justin Herbert, who we know is a cannon of an arm. And I bet Kellen Moore looks at that and he's like, I have something that he's going to get a weaker cornerback covering him. So I like Keenan Allen. I'm a little lower on him. I think he'll play more games this season. He played 10 last year. I just don't love spending a high pick on him. And that's why he's at the bottom of my tier 3, literally the last receiver, because I think everybody that I have above him has more of a chance to take over and get better numbers. So I'm a little lower on Keenan Allen this season than I had been in the past, but
I think
not a guy I'm drafting this year.
Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper are like towards the back end of my tier 3, but I agree. I think where I'm drafting right here, I'd rather have a guy that I see with a higher ceiling than a high floor in most of my drafts. Now, if I say I only have like one wide receiver at this point, which would be I'd be panicking, then maybe I take a Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper because you're getting at least solid production there. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Next up is at wide receiver 19, which is I have him at wide receiver 18, right in line there. Calvin Ridley, your guy, my former guy, still kind of my guy. Outside of Elijah Moore, apparently the best wide receiver ever in training camp.
He is. Go watch the tape. Run the film. Grind the all 22. This guy's
I love Calvin Ridley. I am a little bit skeptical that Kirk's not still going to be the number one option there. We kind of talked about it with ETN too in our running backs episode. Just a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. Do I think it can sustain 2 to 3? Absolutely, but obviously Ridley didn't play last year. Learning a new offense. I think there's some doubt there in terms of what his actual role is going to be, but in terms of the talent and the player and the fit, I love him.
Yeah, I think he's going to be like, it's so hard for me to say this because like, I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be the clear-cut number one come week one. And that's no knock on Christian Kirk. Like, I think Christian Kirk is more of the value pick on the Jags offense. I think Calvin Ridley's going to go a little higher. You've seen Christian Kirk. He's come up a little bit, but his ADP, we'll get to him. I mean, it's a little bit lower. So he's not a guy that I'm drafting. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm a Jag. Like, I love Calvin Ridley. I've loved everything I've seen about him. I liked him in Alabama. I've watched him with the Falcons. Like, I don't know what's going to happen on this offense, but there's so many guys. They have Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne. I think it's going to just get like spread across all of them, and that's going to kind of depress the value of everybody there. So from a fantasy perspective, I don't love it, but somebody on this Jags offense is going to score. Like, they were a top 10 offense last year. I think to a lesser degree, it's like the Chargers, the Bengals argument. Like, there's just so many weapons out there. It's hard to pick the guy that you want to bet on. I love Calvin Ridley, and there is a chance that this guy comes in and he could finish as like a top 15 receiver for fantasy this year. He is in a contract year. I mean, that's some motivation where I think through those injuries that he may have coming back after not playing here, he's going to fight through him and he's going to play. And so far, I mean, like, Trevor Lawrence loves throwing the ball. So I like him. Not a guy that I'm drafting. Maybe in some leagues, in some formats, but he's got to be a flex guy to me. You can't be drafting him as a wide receiver. Like, he has to be a flex player if you're going to get him. So
similar to Garrett Wilson too, I am not nervous, but I could see a scenario where someone is just like way overdrafting him, thinking that he's going to be a top 5 receiver based on his history and just like his name. And could he be? Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a scenario where it happens, but I could see him going like a whole round earlier than I'm willing to take him. So
yeah,
for that reason, I'm probably not. Yeah. Okay, we move on to wide receiver 20, DeAndre Hopkins. Decent landing spot in Tennessee, I guess, but not a landing spot anybody thought he was going to be in. He still saw like 30% target share in Carolina or in Arizona last year. I think he's obviously 31 years old now. I think there's still a lot. He's still a great receiver. Not a guy that I'm really taking many shares on.
No, I don't have much to say. I mean, I have him a lot lower than his ADP right now, and I think his name is going to rise because he's a historical name. Like, everybody knows DeAndre Hopkins, right? Like,
he's wide receiver 26 for me. So yeah, I'm also pretty low on him.
Yeah, he played 9 games last year, and I just don't think. Sure, might he play like 12 to 15 games? Maybe. I don't love Tennessee's passing offense anyway. I don't think they're going to score a lot of points, and I don't think he's going to get a lot of touchdowns. So, like, in my opinion, like, I'm just not going to bet on a guy like that. Honestly, DeAndre Hopkins to me is a bench player. Like, in fantasy, he's a bench player. Like, you can't really bank on him and start him week 1. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. But again, if you go through training camp and you go through the rest of the offseason, maybe that changes. But I think he's a guy that I'm just going to put on my do not draft list.
Yeah, I'm also extremely concerned that the Titans are like 1-5 to start the season, and they put in Will Levis. I mean, at that point, Hopkins is fried.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
And the other thing with him too is, like, not to say that, like, I've never heard anybody say he's a bad teammate, but he has this like aura about him that he might just be like, all right, I'm not about this. Like, trade me. So, like, not that he's like a James Harden-esque of the NFL, but he might just be like, yeah, I'm good. Like, I don't want to do this. He said he wanted to compete, and his only teams he was looking at were the Patriots and the Titans. Like, he could have just waited, held out, and signed with the Bills or done something. Like, you know what I mean? So there is a world where he gets frustrated and he's just kind of like, this isn't really what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. He's got like an injury, keeps him out for 8
yeah,
weeks.
he's
Yeah.
got the lower back that, like, there's nothing you see, but it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm avoiding Hopkins. He's another guy that's definitely getting taken by an auto drafter in one of my leagues. He's going to be like the top guy on ESPN's ranking for like 3 rounds. All right. After Hopkins, we have Terry McLaurin and Chris Godwin, both going 54th overall. McLaurin is just like, you know what you're getting from him. He's going to finish like wide receiver 15 to 20 with whatever quarterback is there. I mean, I have nothing to add on McLaurin. If he's my wide receiver 3, I'm thrilled.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all I understand him. Like, if he's your flex and he's your wide receiver 3, I love him. But like, I have doubts as a wide receiver 2. I don't love him there, but I really do like him as a flex. And it's gonna be funny because there's a guy we're gonna get to who, like, I would actually like as my wide receiver 2 in an outside world. But that's because I think he's got a higher upside. I don't think McLaurin has this crazy upside. I think he's going to be pretty consistent, though. And that's what you want from your flex. If you want 10 points a week, at least. Yeah. In some boom weeks, and he could get to 15 or 20. So I like McLaurin. I don't love him. Godwin, though, I'm curious what you think. Because I have him as my wide receiver 19. I do like Godwin. But the biggest question is, like, okay, if Brady isn't there, what's the value of that wide receiver room?
Yeah, Godwin's my wide receiver 29.
Wow. Okay. So tell me what you don't love about him.
I have no idea what the Bucs are this year. I mean, I think Baker's going to be the guy, which if Baker's the guy, I'm hoping that Godwin and Evans fall a bit, and I'm fine taking them like a round or 2 later than they're going right now. But, yeah, I mean, I still don't know. Like, I think there's a scenario Kyle Trask might play. I think there's a scenario the Bucs are like the worst team in the NFL. So yeah, and then just not knowing if Baker can support 2 top receivers, I guess, is my concern.
I don't think he can. The only reason that I have Godwin above Mike Evans because
so do I, but they're like I have Evans at 32 and Godwin at 29. So like they're right there.
Evans is my 25, Godwin's my 19. I view him a little bit more just because like I think he can get those receptions and his target share in that offense has been there. I think Leftwich and like what they did with him before, they just kept him in positions to get him the ball quickly, and Tom Brady didn't want to hold on to the ball that long. I don't know how the offense looks, and I think any of us trying to predict it, it's like throwing darts at a board, right? We have no idea. But I do like him in some, like he's a flex. Again, we're in flex range at this point. I think he's a flex player with decent upside.
Yeah, I mean, he has gone over 1,000 yards in 3 of his last 4 seasons. He's only 27. I think there is a scenario where Godwin is a wide receiver 2 by the end of the year. It's more of just me avoiding the Bucs as much as possible, I think.
Yeah.
Not a Godwin thing. There's this next crop, though, I'm extremely interested in. So we have Elijah Moore at 55. Like I talked about earlier.
I've got no comments on Elijah Moore. I just want you to take this one and go to town.
Dude, I'm starting to buy the hype on Elijah Moore, dude.
God. All right, maybe I have comments.
Not at 55. 55 is actually a lot higher than I expected him to go, but like was a great prospect, had a great rookie season, and then obviously things didn't really work out in New York. So part of me thinks like if Amari Cooper's at all not playing up to like his typical standard, that Elijah Moore will be the wide receiver 1 in that offense. But yeah, there's other guys behind him that I'm a lot more comfortable taking. Right behind him is Christian Watson, overall 56. I have him as wide receiver 19. Jordan Love, obviously a huge question mark, but Christian Watson balled the fuck out for like 7 games last year after he
with Aaron Rodgers
became acclimated. Yeah. The dude can take I think he's very similar to DK Metcalf, can take any play the distance. I don't know if he's going to see as big of a target share as Metcalf, but definitely like Watson. And it's year 2. 20 wide receiver 25 at market ADP is Tyler Lockett. I have nothing to say about Tyler Lockett other than he will be better than his ADP, like every single season. Yeah,
every single year he plays better than his ADP. Like nobody wants to ever take him.
Nobody,
and he always
he's always good.
He's always good. I agree. Keep rolling through.
Okay. Next we have Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 60. I have Deontay Johnson all the way up at wide receiver 24. I love him this year. Obviously, everyone knows he didn't score a single touchdown last year. He's going to score some this year. I think he's also finished as a top 7 wide receiver in targets for 3 straight years and is basically going at wide receiver 30 this year. Give me that volume in what we expect to be a better offense. I also think people are higher on George Pickens than I am. I still think Deontay Johnson's the alpha in that offense. I'm going to be looking to target Deontay Johnson. What is he going right now? He's going wide receiver, like overall 60s. So that's like 5th roundish. I have no problem taking him there.
He's a guy I love there. Like for the value that you're going to get at that spot, there's a chance he's, he performs as like he's a wide receiver 1. Maybe not to the standard of the top guys, but like that's that offense could be. I love that from him. I really, really love that from him. He's my wide receiver 28. I think he's a guy who's like, so for example, I have Keenan Allen at 27, right? If depending on the build of my team, I'd probably go Deontay Johnson for my flex if that's the position that I'm in, just because I think that there's a higher upside there than a Keenan Allen. So I really like him. I think he's a guy that I'm with you. I'm targeting him in those later rounds. I think he's a guy that you might see on a lot of league-winning teams. That touchdown stat from last year is insane. Like he's going to,
dude. Even if he scored like 3 touchdowns last year, I bet he's going in top 20 wide receivers.
Yeah, it's just the touchdown thing, and like that's what hampered him. And I think Kenny Pickett kind of going into year 2, like the Steelers their people are picking them as a playoff team. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be good. So I like him a lot. He's a guy that I'm targeting in that like 5 to 6 round range.
Yeah. I hate Matt Canada, but hopefully it doesn't affect Deontay too much. This next guy, I obviously am way higher on than he's my wide receiver 17, Drake London. Listen, everybody thinks he's a phenomenal talent. He had a great rookie season. The one thing keeping him back per everybody, we don't know how Desmond Ridder is going to be at quarterback, and we know Arthur Smith's going to run the ball. Now, I'm very high on Desmond Ridder. Some bias in there? Maybe. But 2, I really do think Arthur Smith is going to pass more than people think this year. If you look at Marcus Mariota last year, he literally had a negative EPA. He was the worst starting quarterback in the league for multiple games that he played in. I think they ran the ball so much because they literally had to. I definitely don't think they're going to be like a let's air it out all the time type of team, but I think they're going to have enough volume to support Drake London as a wide receiver 2. So I'm way higher than market ADP on him.
You know what? You probably the reason that I'm so high on him too is probably because of you. I shouldn't be naive here. Like you probably talked me into this. He's my wide receiver 18. Everything you said is true. He's young. He's a second-year receiver. Like that plays to his strengths. 117 targets last year, but didn't get 1,000 yards receiving. There's upside there, and he only had 4 touchdowns. I mean, like if that production increases a little bit, and say he catches 90 balls, 130 targets, 1,100, 1,200 yard receiver, 6 touchdowns, he's performing like a wide receiver too. And that's the guy that I was talking about. Like when you're looking at like Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, those guys, like I take Drake London because again, I think the best case scenario is he performs up in like the T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle category. he might slip and maybe he doesn't get all those numbers, but I think that's his upside, and he's going to be a guy for where he's getting drafted right now. I like him a lot more than I like some of these other names. So,
Yeah, I think the other argument is like Kyle Pitts obviously didn't play in a lot of the games that Drake London went off last year, but I really don't know who else is getting targets on that team besides those two and Bijan Robinson. Like, I think even if they don't pass a ton, they're going to have like 60% of the targets between the two.
yeah.
So, yeah, love Drake London. In real life, fantasy, all the above.
Did you get a jersey yet?
No, just rock Kyle Pitts. My girlfriend actually doesn't like when I wear jerseys, so I kind of stopped buying them. Yeah.
Okay, but when you're watching the game, though, you have to be able to wear a jersey, right? Like
Only if I'm not watching it with her. Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Wow, dude, talk about a dog.
I just look at them, dude. I just look at them. I'm gonna be that guy that starts framing all of them. Mike Evans is also going at 64th. We kind of talked about it earlier. Dude has gone for 1,000 yards every single season. I actually think Baker might be an upgrade over Brady for Mike Evans. As you touched on, Brady was throwing the ball like, I think it was quickest release time in the league last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think Baker might hit Evans on a few of those long balls a little bit more, which is obviously his bread and butter. So he is I have him at wide receiver 32. So he's a tier 4 guy for me, but don't hate him. Right after him is Mike Williams, overall 67th. He's in my tier 3. I have him wide receiver 25. I do think this is probably the year he overtakes Keenan Allen as the wide receiver 1 in LA. So I have them very close to each other, but yeah, I like Mike Williams.
I like Mike Williams. I don't know. Like I said before, if I'm going to try to get on the Chargers offense, it's either going to be through Austin Eckler because he's slipping in the running back category, or I'm taking Quentin Johnson late. That's just my opinion. Mike Williams is going to catch touchdowns, and I agree with you. If there was like the most likely scenario is he's the wide receiver 1, Keenan Allen's wide receiver 2, Quentin Johnson's wide receiver 3. That's the most likely scenario. And even still in that scenario, I don't really love it because I think Keenan Allen's still going to get enough balls to take away from him. So I like Mike Williams. Also, I don't know why I feel this way. I just feel like he leaves games with injuries all the time. It's something that like pops his shoulder, gets a stinger, like his back or leg or hand, whatever, and he's out of the game. So I don't. Again, he's my wide receiver 33. I'm probably a little lower on him than the wide receiver 29, but that's just how I feel about him.
I will agree with you that it does feel like him and Quentin Johnson do the exact same thing. So I don't know how they're going to coexist in that offense, but yeah. I mean,
he plays the slot. Like, what is he gonna like? What's that gonna? Isn't he like he's huge? Like, yeah, you can play in the slot.
If I knew for a fact he was running the slot, I'd be taking a lot more shares of him because most of Mike Williams' production is literally just jump balls, and it's like how many can he come down with in a game? Which is also why he gets hurt a lot. I feel like because he just throws his body around.
Yeah, he's just slinging that around, dude. Don't love that.
Just slinging it, dude. Let's see. After Mike Williams, we have Brandon Ayuk, 72. I don't have much to say on Ayuk. I love the talent. Just, again, so many mouths in San Fran. He's obviously the odd man out.
He's got to put on my roster later on, though, because, like, somehow he puts up numbers in the second half of this. Like, the season goes on, and he, like, becomes the guy that everybody wants. He's going to be trade bait all season.
My problem with Ayuk is you never know which week it's going to happen. Like he's either like he'll put up like 2 points or he'll put up like 20 points.
Yeah.
So
he's trade bait. Like I had him last year, and like every trade package I went into, he was in my trade offer. I was like, yeah, well, I'll just throw him in.
Because there's a guy that you don't mind trading him. That's my point.
Exactly. He's not a guy that I need on my roster, but he's good enough where it's like somebody will think about like if you package him the right way, you can get what you want.
But that goes my point. He's kind of a guy that I feel like I have to justify having him as my wide receiver 3. I don't want that. I would rather have a guy that I feel good about. Like his upside. What is his upside? Like he catches 10 touchdowns, I guess, somehow.
Maybe. I don't even know if that's his upside. That seems that's like a unicorn scenario. I don't even know if he can get how many did he have in a season. I do have my wide receiver 24. He caught 8 touchdowns last year. I guess he can catch 10. He can catch 10. He had 114 targets, 78 catches, 1,000-yard receiver. Like Brandon Ayuk is a good player. Everybody loves the talent, but again, it's just I think McCaffrey. So here's my thing. I think McCaffrey hurts Ayuk more than he hurts Debo. That's where I'm at. I think Debo is a little bit higher on that, weapon chart. Ayuk might see a little drop in like. I still like him later on. Like again, once you get to the bottom of your drafts, if you want a good flyer, he's a great flyer. But again, like you said, if you're looking to get rid of him from the day you draft him, he's not high end either. So,
all right, this next guy, we both absolutely hate him. Michael Pittman going at 73.
Nothing to say about this guy.
Don't like him. The dude had 99 catches last year, and he didn't go over 1,000 yards. That is horrendous.
Insane.
Let's see. His ADOT was a 6.9, which
it's gross.
Debo Samuel had a lower ADOT because he catches like screens and shuffle passes and stuff.
He's a hybrid running back, yeah.
But the dude had 8.8 targets per game with a 6.9 ADOT. Listen, he might be a PPR monster, so if you have like receptions boosted or something, then take him. He's going to get a shitload of catches for no yards. They also bring in Anthony Richardson, rookie quarterback, who in college was not that accurate and also runs a lot. Pittman also not a deep threat at all, obviously, by that ADOT. So I think if Richardson helps out anybody, it's Alec Pierce, who will be running those deep balls. I don't want anything to do with Michael Pittman.
Yeah, he's on my no draft list. I back everything you said. Like I'm not taking this guy. And if he burns me and he's a top 15 wide receiver, so be it. I'll live with that. But I don't see that happening. I don't see that. The one positive I guess you give him, the Colts are going to be trailing. He's going to be in negative game scripts all the time, which is really good for him. But I just don't see. Now, I do think, to say this though, I do think Gardner, like you said this the other day when we were talking offline, like I think Gardner Minshew might play more than people are giving credit for. We're all just kind of assuming Anthony Richardson is going to be the day one starter. And I think it does help him if he plays, but even so, I think his upside's capped and he's just not a guy. He's not a guy I want at all. So he's on my no draft list.
Yeah. One guy I accidentally skipped over was Jerry Jeudy, who I actually have as wide receiver 23. Overall, not a great season, but finished the year with 6 catches for 117. Finished the year with 8 catches, 72 yards, 3 tutties, 7 catches, 76 yards, 6 catches, 117, 7 catches for 38, and then his final game, 5 catches for 154. I think with Hackett out, Peyton in, I like Judy's upside. Feels like a make it break it year for Jeudy too, to live up to the hype. Yeah. So probably the last year I'm in on him unless he balls out. But I like Jeudy.
He's in my tier 3. He's my wide receiver 26. I like him. My only concern is why is Courtland Sutton so much lower than him? Because last year it seemed to me in the talks where Courtland Sutton was the guy, and it wasn't Jerry Jeudy.
I'll tell you why. Because Courtland Sutton is not the guy. He's not the guy.
He isn't, but that kind of – and, Tim Patrick is getting drafted in some – it doesn't make me feel great about Jerry Jeudy, but if the Broncos offense takes the leap that we think they will with Sean Payton, he probably is the best bet on who's going to benefit the most, right? More likely than not, it's going to be Jeudy.
Listen, just by them getting rid of Hackett at the end of last year, that whole offense was better. Russell Wilson put up multiple 28-plus games. Jerry Jeudy obviously snapped at the end of the season. Do I feel great about drafting Jerry Jeudy? No. But, no. I think there is a legit scenario where he finishes as a solid wide receiver too.
There is, and look again as a flex. I like that. I think category I put him in the category of like him, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, Keenan Allen. If I'm getting those guys in my flex, I'm walking out of my draft really happy. I know that I'm like, okay, I have 2 top guys, and I got this guy who might pop off and be a top, wide receiver to himself. So that's where I view him. But I do like Judy. He's my wide receiver 26. I like him.
I am a little bit afraid of Judy being a bit of a brand name, though, in my drafts. I just feel like everyone just thinks of him as like this insane prospect from Bama, which he might still be. But yeah, for him, it's all about value for me. But I would love having him on my team. After Pittman, we have Marquise Brown. Overall, I want nothing to do with the Cardinals offense. So like that's really the only reason I'm not drafting him, but somebody has to get catches, and it's going to be him. So, like, if you want to take a gamble on a volume play, that's probably it. But hear me out. So, you made the best point. I don't want any shares of anything to do with the Cardinals offense. I got Cardinals friends out there. Like, I'm sorry, but your offense this year is going to be bad. And if it's bad through like 6 or 7 weeks, one, we don't know when Kyler's going to come in. There's a chance he gets held out. And if they're really bad, they might just trade him and tank. Like, I don't like anything about this offense. I don't like James Conner. I don't like the receivers. I don't really like anything that's going on in Arizona. So they're pretty much just a stay away team for me. I don't think there's any type of Cardinal defense, offense, anything that's kicker even that's going to be on any of my fantasy teams. Like, there is nothing. No, I'm with you. If I'm taking anybody, it's James Conner.
And even him, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. I need to make a correction here. I knew I was freaking out when I saw Elijah Moore at 55. That was supposed to be DJ Moore going at 55. Which makes way more sense to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, Elijah Moore's my wide receiver 51. DJ Moore's my wide receiver 22. Okay.
I was
like, dude,
that's why I was like, there's no way. Because I was like, I'm buying the hype in Elijah Moore, but I'm not taking him 55th overall.
The market's messed up.
Elijah Moore is actually going 127. DJ Moore, we should talk about him, though. Obviously, wide receiver 1 in Chicago. I like him. I've had shares of DJ Moore in the past. I'm not convinced Justin Fields is just going to be this gunslinger that everybody thinks this year. I think he's still going to run way too much to support a legitimate wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2.
No, I agree with that for the most part. But to be fair, I don't think the Bears have had a receiver who's like DJ Moore, though. Chase Claypool.
You mean you don't think Darnell Mooney was a top 10 guy?
No. Darnell Mooney is just look at where the other guys are going now. Chase Claypool and Mooney have dropped like rocks to the bottom, right? I just don't believe that Justin Fields, like, I know they're like, oh, these guys are good. He hasn't had a talent like DJ Moore. So I do think DJ Moore is – I get where the hype is coming from. I also think at the same time, he is a guy who can tank your team. If you draft him where he's going, there's a chance that pick ruins your team entirely. If you're right? If Justin Fields is running around, taking that share away from them. But there is a world where I kind of like the stack of getting a Fields, flexing a DJ Moore, having 2 other good receivers in some type of running back room, and you might be really happy. That's a sneaky stack that I think might work in your favor if things work out. Because then you get the Justin Fields running, but then any of the passing that you think is going to DJ Moore, you pick that up too. I think he's a careful pick, but you should consider DJ Moore.
My worry is that DJ Moore is going to have to be so efficient with the targets he gets to meet ADP that I don't know if I'm willing to take him at, where's he going? 55th overall. Let me just see who else is going in that range. Like Justin Fields is going 56. I'm obviously taking him over them. Like, let's see who some of the running backs are.
Alexander Madison or J.K. Dobbins or him. Like, I'm at that point, I'm taking the flyer on DJ Moore.
I would take DJ Moore, but like Cam Akers is going 56. I kind of like Akers better there.
You like Akers. You're higher on Akers than I am. I think at that point, like, all those running backs to me, like, they'll be good. They'll be solid. DJ Moore, like I said, if he's your third wide receiver, I see it. But
I guess the one thing we can say about DJ Moore is he's played in some pretty bad situations already, and he's been good.
Who have his quarterbacks been?
Yeah, he's been
his
good.
Quarterbacks have been
Baker and Sam Darnold.
PJ Walker is actually like his best quarterback per game for like his best. I'm like
Cam Newton and like his last year in Carolina, I think.
That's all. That's like he hasn't really had a fair shake. So like, if you believe Justin Fields is going to be good though, and you think he's going to take another step, I think this warrants drafting DJ Moore. But
yeah, I think. I mean, I don't hate it in the 5th round, I guess, but like, I just feel like his range of outcomes is way wider than I'm willing to take at that point in the draft.
Yeah.
But a lot of it depends on who else is there, obviously. All right. Wrapping up here, I'll rapid fire some of the last guys. So we have Jahan Dotson going at 88 overall, wide receiver 33. Pickens, wide receiver 34. JSN, wide receiver 35. Brandon Cooks, 36. Treylon Burks, 37. Michael Thomas, 38. Jacoby Myers, 39. And OBJ, 40th. Anything you want to touch on with those guys?
There's a chance OBJ is good, and I think OBJ is going to get overdrafted just on name alone. I have a real concern that he's going to play a full season. Like, I just think once the injury bug starts, it doesn't stop. So if I'm getting on the Ravens offense and a guy that, we'll throw some names out at the end, I think it's Zay Flowers, not just because we're Boston College guys.
I love Zay too. And it seems like Rashad Bateman is hurt still. I don't know what the hell is going on with him, but yeah, I agree. If I'm buying into the Ravens offense, it's going to be Lamar, or Zay Flowers, and Mark Andrews for me. I'm definitely lower on Pickens than most people. I guess not that much lower. I have him wide receiver 35. He's going at 34. I similar to what we were talking about with Mike Williams, like I feel like his production comes from just such hard like routes and plays, and I don't know if Matt Canada's smart enough to fix that. I think Pickens is a phenomenal wide receiver, but like how many points can you get just throwing jump balls every week?
I don't. So, I have him at wide receiver 36. I like him, but again, he's a guy that I'm just stashing on my bench and hoping he kind of like. I remember last year, as he picked up toward the second half of the season, he was a great trade value. When you're trying to build some trades, he was great. So he's a guy to put on the bench, and if he pops, he can be good for you. But there's a lot to be discovered there. I don't think that it's set in stone. I mean, he had 52 catches last year. Like, that's not going to get the job. Like, that's not. If he does that this year, you're going to be disappointed where you draft him. So,
I'm actually higher on Treylon Burks. I know everybody is kind of turned off by him because of Hopkins. I actually think that might help him. He won't see the number one corner. Obviously, Tannehill's going to play more games now. I think if anybody's hurt by it, it's Chig Okonkwo. I still think Burks is going to be great. Great profile. He's a second-year guy. So at 104, I'll take him every time. JSN, I don't have an opinion of one way or the other. I think he'll be solid either way. But speaking on rookie wide receivers, I think Jordan Addison is going to basically seamlessly fit into that Adam Thielen role. I love him.
I think he's going to outperform Adam Thielen role too. I think if you're looking at, because the trend has been rookie wide receivers coming in, and like that, even like it's kind of catching up with the rookie running back trend, right? Like rookie wide receivers come in and perform. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson last year. There's going to be those guys, and you don't have to spend a high pick on those guys. So like, when you get toward the back halves of these drafts, like get some shares of these rookie wide receivers because some of them are going to pop. And Addison is a guy I'm with you. I think he's the guy that I would target. Even though I know JSN's rated higher, Zay Flowers, like I like Addison and his kind of clear cut number two
I just
role.
think that the Vikings are going to pass it a lot more than the Seahawks, and Addison's the
Mm-hmm.
clear number two, where JSN, we don't know where he fits in with Lockett and DK. Obviously, like you said, I love Zay Flowers. I think the Ravens are going to pass it a lot more with Todd Monken this year. And from all reports out of camp, Zay Flowers has been the best receiver so far. You like Quentin Johnson. I'm like pretty indifferent on him. Elijah Moore, I'll be taking at 127 a lot. I actually like Juju Smith-Schuster at 116. I just think people are so out on the Patriots offense that there's some value there. Just basically
Yeah,
all around the board. Then
I
some
agree with
deep
that.
sleepers for me. I love Nico Collins going at 143 for the Texans. Big body receiver, probably going to be the number one there. Again, rookie quarterback, so I wouldn't expect too much, but like, where you're taking him, you're not really expecting much from him. And then last guy that I'm buying the hype on, Justin Ross in Kansas City. I mean,
Okay, before we go into this, I was just about to ask you. It's like so funny to me. We went through all of these receivers and we talked about all these guys, right? And like the funniest part is in Kansas City, like the team that just won the Super Bowl, like we have not mentioned a single receiver from that team. We're talking about Justin Ross, and I want to know because like I can guarantee you this: there's a receiver on that team that is going to be a league win. Like one of those guys is going to end up on a bunch of league winners. You're not going to be the number one offense in the NFL and not have a guy from the wide receiver position who's putting up numbers. We just don't know who it is. There's Sky Moore, there's Justin Ross, there's Rashee Rice.
well, you
Who
say
is it
that
going to
now,
be?
but last year there wasn't.
There wasn't, but Juju Smith-Schuster was solid for him. You know what I mean? Like it's Travis Kelce. It's gonna the buck starts and stops at Travis Kelce. We all get that. But there's gonna be production in the receiver room, and like, who is it gonna be? So you like Justin Ross? I mean, give me
I'm
some.
out on. I'm out on Kadarius Toney because he's gonna play like 5 games.
Yeah,
I could, Sky Moore's in his second year. I think there's nobody's talking about him, which almost makes me love him.
yeah,
Like he's
he's
kind of
under the
just
radar.
under the radar right now. People are in on Rashee Rice as well, who's a rookie. I'm a little bit lower on him. I think MVS is a solid like floor play, but at this point in the draft, I'm drafting for straight upside. So
Boom. Yeah,
I'm
there's
probably
no.
going. I'm probably
Yeah,
going.
for real.
I could see draft where I take both Sky Moore and Justin Ross. And watch, Rashee Rice is going to be the guy, and I'm going to get screwed. But that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But I like Sky Moore and Justin Ross in that offense if I'm taking either of them. Yeah, then those are probably my deepest sleepers. Yeah, like Justin Ross going 244 overall, like that's like your last round pick. I have no problem just rostering him.
I want to call it a couple guys. Like, so Jonathan Mingo's a guy that I really like. He's the rookie receiver in Carolina. I just don't think Carolina's got like the guys that are DJ Chark and Adam Thielen. I just don't think those guys are really top notch anymore. I think there's room for Minga to step in and be good. I like Tyquan Thornton as just a flyer for the Patriots. That guy, I think he might be the most talented receiver in that room. And if it starts to show through, like he's a guy that I think could be used in Bill O'Brien's offense, like I'm not saying it's going to make or break your season or swing the needle one way or another, but I do think he's a guy to take a look at. You know, Romeo Dobbs, I think these are just these later round guys nobody's talking about. And at this point, I put Michael Thomas in there too. At this late in the draft, if I'm gonna take a flyer on a guy, I know I've done it before, and then Michael Thomas isn't gonna play any games. But I would put him on your team just in case. Because if he does, like you know what Michael Thomas's top end is, the guys down here, like you're just taking shots. Why not take a shot on a guy that might end up as like, a top receiver if he plays the full season? So Jameson Williams is an interesting one for me too, and that's my last guy I think I'll just call out. Like there is an outside world where he comes back from this gambling scandal and he is a big part of this offense. That dude's fast. We haven't really got to see what he can do yet. He's a guy that I'm targeting toward the end of the draft because, like, I'll just put him on my IR spot and I'll just leave him there until he comes back.
My worry is that, one, he's going like wide receiver like 60 right now. And my other worry is even when he was healthy last year, like he kind of sucked.
He did,
and maybe that's just because he hasn't
didn't
played
have
that
an
much,
offseason.
but who knows? Yeah.
He got hurt and like he didn't really have an offseason. And I think when you just throw a receiver in against like an NFL like fast-paced defense mid-year, I don't think he had any chance. And I think he was like, I mean, he had drops too, and he wasn't like notorious for drops in college. So like I think the offseason, and he's not hurt now. Like he's still getting like to work out, practice, get his body ready. I don't know. I don't really. He's a last round guy for me. It's like if he's not drafted and he's sitting there, I'm putting him on my team, putting him on my IR, and I'm gonna pick up somebody else the second free agency opens. But just somebody to keep in mind because I think he's not going to get talked about with the suspension. So
yeah, I'll say I'm not taking Michael Thomas because I bet on him to lead the league in receptions last year, and he just played like 2 games.
bet. That's a bad bet.
It was great. Wide receivers. Trust me, you need good wide receivers to win your league this year. We'll be back with a quarterback episode, tight end episode, probably a couple else in there. Appreciate you all listening. Talk to everybody next time. Peace.